And when everyone's super, no one will be.
Syndrome from The Incredibles might seem like a joke character turned petty villain, but when I look beyond his flamboyant gadgets and catchphrases, I find a villain so cleverly crafted that he stands among Pixar's finest creations, and perhaps even as animation's most iconic megalomaniac.
I'll be a bigger hero than you ever were.
He's driven by a warped obsession with greatness, an obsession that leads him to shatter every moral boundary. But not just that, also is full of contradictions, despises superheroes, yet craves to be one, which makes him disturbingly ambitious, dangerously relatable, and ultimately his own worst enemy. The Incredibles came out just before the superhero movies trend took over Hollywood. Even after 2 decades, Syndrome remains one of the standout elements that keeps the film feeling fresh and unique, even, dare I say, incredible? But what drives Syndrome's hypocrisy, his obsession, and his endless list of fatal flaws? And how does he mirror the very hero he despises? There's a reason Syndrome is unforgettable, and it's not just because of his flashy gadgets. Crafting a villain like him is a masterclass in writing complexity, which you'll learn too. To understand how obsession, ego, and hypocrisy collide to create this megalomaniac, we need to grasp the world of Incredibles first. Pixar carefully built that world in a way that made Syndrome work so well. But how? Well, the story starts in the 1940s, the golden era of supers, where they have all the fame, public love, celebrity status, and basically everything superheroes have in every superhero movie. They fight evil and protect the world against any threat. They work with the government and are a part of the society. We are introduced to Mr. Incredible, or Bob Parr, as a 25-year-old slim-waisted, exceptionally tall and muscular man with a broad chest, shoulders, and arms. He's incredibly strong and physically invulnerable. Bob thrives on fighting crime. He's always busy chasing robbers and rescuing cats. In fact, just hours before his wedding, he's out preventing accidents, stopping a bank robbery, and even halting a train crash.
Thank you, Mr. Incredible. You've done it again.
Yeah, you're the best.
No, I'm just here to help.
In short, it's a high-octane life of constant heroism. But everything changes for Bob and his fellow supers when the public, tired of the collateral damage from these heroic feats, starts filing lawsuits against the supers. Under growing pressure, the government outlaws superheroes, forcing them into retirement and pushing them to lead normal lives in secrecy. Fast forward 15 years, Bob has settled down with his wife Helen, who, by the way, is Elastigirl. And they have 3 children, Violet, Dash, and Jack. Life, however, is far from thrilling. Bob has grown obese and works as a claims adjuster for a corrupt insurance company, which he clearly hates.
Mr. Huff would like to talk to you in his office.
He's battling his growing frustration as he suppresses his superpowers and tries to maintain a normal life. He dreams of his glory days and hopes to become a superhero once again. That is until he's contacted by Mirage, a mysterious agent who offers him a secret job to subdue a renegade robot on an uncharted volcanic island. Tempted by the chance to use his powers again and the generous payout, Bob accepts, but he keeps his mission a secret from his family. Once he gets to the island, it only takes him a certain amount of effort to dismantle the robot. He returns with a hefty reward and a sense of purpose restored. He gets back in shape and begins to lead a much happier life with his family. Not very long after, Mirage reaches out again with another assignment, and Bob agrees, only to realize too late that it's all a trap. This time, an upgraded robot proves too powerful for him, and just as he's on the verge of defeat, Syndrome reveals himself. Bob quickly recognizes him as the boy who idolized him all those years ago.
I am your biggest fan.
Buddy?
But how did a devoted fan evolve into this twisted villain? Well, it's time I shift the focus to Syndrome and his journey from fanboy to megalomaniac mastermind. Was it Bob's fault that spiraled Syndrome's obsession into a vendetta that would reshape his life and threaten everyone else's, or did he develop it on his own? Syndrome first appears in the movie as Buddy Pine. he is a loud, eccentric kid who claims to be Mr. Incredible's #1 fan. Although he lacks powers, Buddy is obsessed with the dream of becoming a superhero. But not just any superhero, he has branded himself as Incrediboy and envisions himself as Mr. Incredible's sidekick. He even sneaks into Mr. Incredible's car, pestering the hero mid-mission, and insists on taking him along. He claims that Mr. Incredible doesn't need to worry about training him. He already knows Mr. Incredible's moves, crime-fighting style, and catchphrases. But Mr. Incredible, understandably, refuses to bring a kid into dangerous situations. But Buddy is obsessed with the idea of becoming a super, to the point that he appears out of nowhere in the middle of a fight where Mr. Incredible is stopping an infamous bank robber, Bon Voyage.
And Incrediboy!
He has created a pair of rocket shoes that allow him to fly up to skyscrapers, and even in the middle of a crime scene, he argues with Mr. Incredible about why he should let Buddy in as his sidekick. However, his uninvited attempt to help only ends up creating a whole lot more danger, eventually leading to a huge catastrophe. Furious, Mr. Incredible has the police take Buddy home, warning him to stop his superhero antics for his own good. Instead of learning from this experience, Buddy internalizes the rejection and turns it into a lifelong grudge. He perceives this moment of rejection as humiliation, which becomes a deep-seated grudge, one that will drive his twisted ambitions for years to come. When we meet him again, he's no longer Buddy. He's Syndrome, a self-made supervillain with weapons so advanced they make superpowers seem weak. Over the years, he's turned his brilliance into building deadly technology, selling his inventions and weaponry to governments worldwide. This wealth has enabled him to build his own high-tech fortress on a remote island, complete with an army and his romantic interest, Mirage, who is also his right hand in his evil plan of domination.
He's attracted to power. So am I.
Syndrome isn't just a fan gone wrong. He's a man whose wounded pride transformed into a relentless, megalomaniacal obsession. His arc makes me wonder what drives someone to turn admiration into a mission of total annihilation. He's determined to redefine heroism on his own terms, no matter the cost. His vendetta against superheroes is rooted in a bitterness he's nursed for years. Rejected and humiliated by his idol, Buddy didn't just let go of his dream, he weaponized his resentment. To him, superheroes weren't noble or exceptional. They were frauds who hoarded greatness and denied him a chance to prove himself. So he set out on a mission to bring them all down. So, driven by this obsession, Syndrome dedicates his life to creating weapons powerful enough to destroy any superhero. And what's his ultimate goal? Well, to systematically wipe out every last one of them. He lures supers to his island, testing his deadly inventions on them until he perfects the ultimate weapon. But Syndrome's ambitions don't stop there. After eliminating the world's superheroes, he plans to unleash his killer robot on a city only to defeat it himself. In his mind, this public display would make him the ultimate hero, who's adored by everyone, the very acclaim that he believes he was denied as a child. He craves more than revenge. He wants the spotlight he feels he deserves all along, aiming to replace the very heroes he despises and emerge as the only superhero left. Now, the point that deserves a bit more of our attention is just how deep an ambition must run that it takes the shape of a full-blown megalomaniac madness. In Syndrome's case, this obsession was perfectly revealed in the following particular scene. Mr. Incredible gets into Syndrome's computer and finds the record showing how, one by one, each hero fought against the Omnidroid. But no one could survive the second encounter with an improved version. This scene exposes the depth of Syndrome's obsession. Syndrome has dedicated his entire life to this vendetta, pouring every ounce of his genius and resources into a single-minded mission to exterminate superheroes. For him, it's not enough to kill a few, he's methodically wiping them all out, testing his machines on them as though they were lab experiments, adjusting and perfecting each iteration to ensure there's no escape. This is obsession in its purest form, and it's driven by a grudge that he has clung to since childhood. But even this isn't the endgame. Syndrome's ambition goes beyond revenge. It's about validation. His need to prove himself as great consumes him. Syndrome craves acknowledgement as more than an ordinary human without powers. He wants the world to see him as a hero. He's convinced that if he can be the last one standing, the world will finally admire him. And every dollar he's earned and every invention he's created has been channeled into achieving his dream.
Am I good enough now? Who's super now? I'm Syndrome, your nemesis at it.
Yet his obsession has also made him dangerously arrogant. Syndrome believes his brilliance and technology make him invincible. In his eyes, he's not only superior to Mr. Incredible, but to all superheroes. They're relics of an outdated system, while he envisions himself as the future. His pride blinds him to the risks of his own ambition, leading him to believe he's above all consequences.
Oh, I'm real enough to defeat you! And I did it without your precious gifts, your oh-so-special powers.
In the end, he's so wrapped up in his need to prove himself that he loses sight of everything else, including his own humanity and all the moral boundaries. But how far would Syndrome really go to get the respect he craves? Syndrome's bitterness has transformed him into something truly evil. He's cynical and convinced that respect can only be achieved through fear.
See? Now you respect me, because I'm a threat. That's the way it works.
This screwed up mindset drives his sadistic tendencies, which he displays multiple times throughout the movie, most notably when he discovers Helen on the transmission. Without hesitation, he launches missiles at the plane, smiling as he forces Mr. Incredible to listen to the impending destruction.
So you do know these people? Oh, well then, I'll send them a little greeting.
His cruelty runs so deep that even the presence of children on the plane doesn't stop him. He views them merely as collateral damage in his bigger mission. And as is the case with all evil megalomaniacs, Syndrome's disregard isn't limited to his enemies. He's willing to risk the life of his closest ally just to prove Mr. Incredible wrong. In this scene, even if Mr. Incredible does end up harming Mirage, it will only help Syndrome prove that Mr. Incredible was never truly a hero. And if he doesn't and let her go, as we see him do in the movie, it confirms Mr. Incredible's weakness. I mean, come on you guys, tell me if this isn't the best display of obsessive, sinister villainy you've seen in an animated movie. This is some Joker from the Dark Knight level of Machiavellian manipulation right here. But even at his most villainous, Syndrome shares surprising similarities with Mr. Incredible. Now, I know what you're thinking, how could an immoral megalomaniac possibly resemble the heroic protagonist of the story? Allow me to explain. You see, after the initial incidents in the film, both characters are driven by fantasies that shape their actions. Syndrome dreams of becoming the ultimate super, powerful and adored by all after eliminating his self-proclaimed enemies. Mr. Incredible, on the other hand, dreams of reclaiming his glory days, returning to the life of a crime fighter and beloved hero. While Bob is obsessed with reclaiming the past, Syndrome is fixated on crafting a future where he is recognized as the world's greatest hero. Ironically, their obsessions are also their downfalls. Bob's longing to feel super again clouds his judgment, putting him and his family at risk. And once he realizes this, he's overcome with regret, admitting that his need for validation led him to undervalue his family.
This is my fault. I've been a lousy father, blind to what I have, so obsessed with being undervalued that...
Syndrome, however, is trapped in his obsession. He's so consumed with proving himself that he can't see beyond his thirst for power. While Bob's obsession teaches him humility, Syndrome's only tightens his grip on bitterness and pride, preventing any chance of growth or redemption. Plus, for Bob, being a hero was never about fame or recognition. He genuinely cared about helping people. This is clear in a small but telling moment early in the film when he stops to help an old lady save her cat from a tree, even though it brings no glory or recognition. For Mr. Incredible, heroism is about making a difference. In contrast, Syndrome's ambition is based entirely on ego. He craves the spotlight and will sacrifice anything or anyone to get it. But the contradictions don't just stop there. Let's take a closer look at the hypocrisy that defines his character. From the start, it's clear that what he craves isn't heroism, it's the spotlight. Even as a kid, when he interrupts Mr. Incredible's face-off with Bon Voyage, his focus isn't on stopping the crime. It's entirely on proving himself and being seen as worthy. This obsession with image over actual heroism becomes a defining trait that follows him into adulthood and can be seen in every action he makes. Syndrome criticizes supers relentlessly, labeling them as arrogant and selfish, yet everything he does is designed to mimic them. He's obsessed on being admired, not on understanding the true responsibility of a hero. A real hero is supposed to protect and improve the lives of others, but Syndrome's actions reveal he has no interest in these ideals. He's even willing to sell his destructive inventions to anyone, regardless of their intentions, showing a complete disregard for the consequences. Even in the end, when he finally arrives in the city to debut as the world's new hero, his focus isn't on stopping his rampaging Omnidroid, but on making himself look impressive. You can see this when he carelessly throws a truck aside to seem cool, showing little concern for the added destruction it causes. So what happens when such a relentless obsession blinds someone completely that they can no longer see the danger in their own actions? Well, in case of Syndrome, it leads him to everything that eventually causes his downfall. He continually underestimates his opponents, never learning from his mistakes. Twice, Mr. Incredible escapes when Syndrome believes he's eliminated him. The same goes for Elastigirl, Dash, and Violet, who survive his attack on the plane, defying his certainty that they'd been taken care of. He dismisses the potential of Dash and Violet entirely, underestimating their powers, a mistake that allows Violet to help her family escape effortlessly once again. Syndrome's blindness even extends to his own creations. In his first confrontation with Mr. Incredible, he misuses his 0-point energy ray, accidentally flinging him over a waterfall, revealing a lack of control over his own weapons. Later, he underestimates his Omnidroid, believing he can easily stop it in the city, only to be overpowered by the very monster he unleashed. The truth is that if Syndrome had used his genius brain and inventions for good, he could have left a far greater legacy than any superhero. But his megalomaniac obsession blinded him to any path other than destruction. But how? Well, even in his final scene, he has not learnt from his previous mistakes and still underestimated his opponents when he went to kidnap Jack, a sequence that ended with his incredibly painful and horrible death. Syndrome is killed when his cape gets him sucked into the jet turbine and his manta jet explodes as a result. This moment is a callback to costume designer Edna's earlier advice about capes. They are nothing but a way to be flashy at the expense of functionality and safety. As good as this joke works, it also carries a deeper symbolic significance. Syndrome was always obsessed with the spectacle of being a hero, with the appearance of power and fame rather than the substance of heroism. His death by cape, which is a symbol of his flashiness, perfectly depicts how his obsession with glory and recognition ultimately led to his downfall. Furthermore, the fact that the only thing that could destroy his Omnidroid was the robot itself. It's a powerful metaphor. Syndrome's own creations and ambitions backfired, destroying him in the end. Had he chosen to use his talents for good rather than for revenge, he could have been celebrated as an incredible scientist or inventor. But his relentless pursuit of stardom became his undoing, leaving him as nothing more than the architect of his own tragic end. Syndrome's story ultimately serves as a cautionary tale, a villain consumed by obsession, blinded by ego, and destroyed by his own ambitions. But you can't just craft a megalomaniac villain just like that. There's more essentials to it. But what are those essentials? They all lie in the valuable storytelling. A well-constructed villain like Syndrome creates unique multidimensional conflicts that go farther than mere physical battles. They challenge the protagonist's beliefs, values, and personal growth. Syndrome's character doesn't just pose a physical threat to Mr. Incredible and his family. He forces them to confront their own fears, limitations, and the importance of their unity. His obsessive traits add a rich layer of tension to the narrative. His relentless ambition and deep-seated resentment create moments of suspense that push the Incredibles to their limits. As a result, the family, especially Mr. Incredible, face not only external threats but also internal struggles, like overcoming self-doubt and rediscovering the true meaning of heroism. We can use Syndrome's character as an incredible blueprint for crafting a powerful megalomaniac villain of our own. His complexity, contradictions, and ultimate downfall add depth to the Incredibles and showcase how well-written villains can elevate a story. So let me break down the steps to create a character like Syndrome. Step number 1, define their ideology. Every compelling villain needs a core ideology that drives their actions. For Syndrome, this ideology is rooted in resentment and a twisted desire for equality. He believes that
I'll give them the most spectacular heroics anyone's ever seen. And when I'm old and I've had my fun, I'll sell my inventions.
reflecting his disdain for the elite status of heroes and his belief that power should be accessible to anyone, including himself. However, this ideology is hypocritical because at his core, Syndrome doesn't want equality. He wants supremacy. To build a megalomaniac villain, define an ideology that resonates with them and informs their actions, but also reveals their personal bias and selfish motivations. The more specific and intense this ideology, the more powerful the villain's impact on the story. Step number 2, establish a contradictory moral code. Syndrome operates with a moral code that is deeply contradictory. He despises superheroes for their arrogance, but eagerly seeks the recognition they receive. His actions continuously contradict his stated beliefs, showing a willingness to do anything to get the respect he craves. He despises the notion of heroes, yet he models himself as one, believing that only he deserves the title. For your megalomaniac villain, create a moral code that directly contradicts their ideology. This tension between what they claim to believe and how they actually behave adds layers of complexity and makes the character's hypocrisy evident to the audience. It also makes their motivations unpredictable, adding intrigue to the story. Step number 3, heighten their need for control and recognition. Every well-written megalomaniac villain has an intense need for control, recognition, and validation. Syndrome's entire arc is fueled by his desire to prove his worth and establish himself as the ultimate hero, even if it means eliminating every real hero in his path. His meticulous planning, from the Omnidroid tests to his scheme to save the city, highlights his need for absolute control over the narrative. This need for control and recognition is what ultimately blinds him to the consequences of his actions, making him vulnerable. When writing a villain like Syndrome, emphasize their hunger for power and control, making it clear that they see themselves as the hero of their own story. This desire for control will create dramatic conflicts as they attempt to bend every situation to their will. Step 4. Infuse their genius with a fatal flaw. A perfect megalomaniac villain should be both brilliant and flawed. Syndrome's genius is undeniable. He's a gifted inventor with technology that rivals superpowers. Yet his fatal flaw, which is his obsession with his ego and his need to outshine real heroes, leads him to underestimate those around him. He dismisses the strength of Mr. Incredible and his family, and even misjudges the power of his own Omnidroid, believing he can control it effortlessly. This blind spot is what eventually leads to his undoing. To create a villain like Syndrome, give them a fatal flaw that directly ties into their strengths. This flaw should gradually unravel as their ambitions escalate, revealing how their greatest asset is also their downfall. Step number 5. Create a downfall that's poetic and inevitable. Every good story with a good antagonist needs a downfall for the villain that should feel both poetic and inevitable. It needs to reflect the flaws that shaped their journey. Syndrome's end is perfectly symbolic. He dies because of his own obsession with flashy appearances. Moreover, his own invention, the Omnidroid, spirals out of control, highlighting his arrogance and short-sightedness. For a villain like Syndrome, their end should feel like a natural result of their own choices, a consequence that stems directly from their actions and beliefs. It serves as a powerful reminder that their path was always leading to this moment. In short, creating a megalomaniac villain like Syndrome requires the writers to build a character with deep-seated motivations, complex contradictions, and an inevitable downfall. Syndrome's journey from fan to villain shows how obsession, hypocrisy, and unchecked ambition can lead a character to destroy not just others but themselves. Finally, a well-written villain is one of the most critical elements of any story. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. In the comments below, tell me what villain would you like to see me analyze next.